الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده سبحانه وتعالى حمد المعترفين بنعمائه العظيمة وآلائه الجسيمة. اللهم لك الحمد يا ربنا، أنت أحق أن تحمد، ولك الشكر، أنت أحق أن تشكر، وأنت على كل شيء قدير. لك العتبى حتى ترضى، ولا حول ولا قوة لنا إلا بك. اللهم لك الحمد بعدد قطر الأمطار، ولك الحمد بعدد ورق الأشجار، ولك الحمد ما تعاقب علينا الليل والنهار. لك الحمد يا منشئ السحاب، ولك الحمد يا هازم الأحزاب، ولك الحمد يا مسبب الأسباب. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وحبيبه، بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وكشف الغمة، وجاهد في الله حق الجهاد حتى أتاه اليقين. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على الحبيب المصطفى محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه ومن اهتدى بهديه وعمل بسنته إلى يوم الدين. وارض عنا معهم بفضلك وكرمك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم آمين. I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of heavens and earth, the provider, the cherisher, the sustainer, the bestower of bounties, the source of guidance. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala endlessly in His glory for the blessings that He has granted me and my loved ones. And I express my gratitude to the Lord in words and action. I say Alhamdulillah for blessings I know and blessings I know not. I bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship save Allah. And I bear witness that Muhammad is Allah's final prophet and messenger, the bearer of glad tidings, the role model to be followed, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May the peace and the blessings of Allah be upon him and his family, his descendants and companions and their followers, and all righteous men and women that walk steadily in their footsteps. And I ask Allah to make each and every one of us among them. Allahumma ameen. My dear brothers and sisters, I greet you with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. طبتم وطاب ممشاكم وتبوأتم من الجنة مقعدا. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and bless the steps that you've taken to this masjid. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make each and every one of you among those who are admitted to Jannah in its highest levels. Ameen. Our community and our society face a tremendous host of challenges. Right here at home, we struggle with injustice, with near state of tyranny, with racism and sexism, and a lot of poverty. Abroad, there are rampant problems of war and famine, a lot of dictatorship, and things that we have to worry about every single day. Overall, we suffer from materialism and consumerism and racism and a truckload of other isms. And as men and women of faith, we naturally resort to the Quran in order to find guidance. What does the Quran say about these matters? What does the Quran say about these challenges and these problems? And if you don't do that, by the way, you render the Quran irrelevant and you render yourself in a state of complete disconnect from the deen. Because some people think that they only need to go back to the Quran in order to understand how to worship God, how to pray and how to fast and how to give my zakat, what is halal and what is haram, the do's and the don'ts. But the Quran goes beyond that, brothers and sisters, because the Quran teaches you about how to resolve the ongoing challenges of your society. Otherwise, the Quran is not relevant anymore. If we think that the Quran doesn't have solutions, then the Quran is not relevant anymore. And if the Quran has the solutions, but we don't consult with the Quran, then the Quran, despite our efforts, will still be irrelevant. And modern Muslims have done a pretty good job in rendering the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala irrelevant when they don't use it, when they don't consult with it, when they don't search for solutions in it. So as Muslims of this present age, we look into the Quran in order to find solutions. What do we say to people when they tell us, where do you as a Muslim community stand on gun violence and gun control? How do we answer that question in a way that is inspired by the Deen? Where do you stand as a Muslim community when it comes to the legalization of substance? How do we respond? Where do you stand as a Muslim community when it comes to the rights of the LGBT community? How do we respond to that question in a way that is true to our faith but still compassionate? We have to dig into the Quran to find solutions, right? And here's why I am bringing this up. I can only imagine what humanity was going through 600 years after Isa alayhi salam left this world. 600 years. And the entire world was suffering from sweeping problems of murder and war and killing and the treatment of women as property. And men used to take their little girls and bury them in the sand alive. There were no rules and there were no laws. People just made up the rules as they go. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided that it was time for humanity to experience the final prophet, who will bring the revelation that will resolve most, if not all, of those issues. So Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and the light of Muhammad came upon humanity in the time of its dire need. And humanity looked into the Quran as we look into the Quran today. How will the Quran resolve the issues that we're struggling with? How do we treat our neighbors? How do I do my business transactions? How do I raise my children? How can I become equitable in the way I treat sons and daughters and men and women in my society? Everyone looked into the Quran. And naturally, the very first verse of the Quran will indicate the priorities of God and the depth of challenge. And we examine the Quran. And you look into the very first ayah that was revealed in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ayah does not address the oppression of women. The ayah does not talk about racism. It does not talk about poverty. The ayah does not talk about war or peace. It doesn't talk about business transactions. It doesn't address any of the issues that humanity suffered from at the time. What does it address? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the very first ayah of the Quran commands the entire world and says, Iqra. Allah says, Iqra. Read. Increase your knowledge. Enlighten your soul. Learn about the world. Become an educated human being. As if ignorance, which is the opposite of Iqra, was the true rampant problem in the world. As if ignorance was the one thing that the Lord needed to address, and when it is addressed, everything else will get fixed and resolved. I think about this a lot. Arab society was a very superstitious society, by culture. They put so much stock into mysticism, into mythology, into magic and things like that. They were very superstitious people. So it makes sense that the Quran will come and address that issue and tell them you need to be enlightened, you need to learn about the world. There is facts and truths out there that you need to address, right? But it's still not strong enough of a reason. When people were murdering their own daughters and burying them in the sand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should have addressed that. Conventional wisdom suggests, or doesn't. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose something entirely different. And He says, I will address ignorance. And I will say that knowledge and the pursuit of knowledge will now become an obligation upon humanity. And the Prophet ﷺ says in the authentic tradition, Sahih of Imam Muslim, he says, طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ. The pursuit of knowledge is mandatory upon every Muslim. It's mandatory. It's not an option anymore. It is mandatory. Maybe it was an option with previous nations, but with us, it is required. It is mandatory. You look at the Quran and the word ilm, which is the Arabic word for knowledge, is, with all of its derivatives, is mentioned about 700 times in the Quran. If you couple that with other words that are synonymous to ilm or that indicate ilm, words such as hikmah, hujjah, burhan, dalil, aql, all these other words in the Quran that are very, very close to ilm, and you are talking about thousands and thousands of occurrences in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thousands of times. And if you look at how many times those words are mentioned in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, you're going to run out of numbers. And it'll give you some measurement of how Allah and His Messenger emphasize the idea of knowledge and learning. Let me ask you a question. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to create Adam and send Adam upon this earth to become His trustee, the angels asked Allah, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءِ? Lord, will you create someone that will spread mischief on earth and spill blood? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to them what? إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I have knowledge that you don't have. I have knowledge that you do not possess. Immediately after, the next ayah, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam the names, the keys to all solutions, the definitions of everything that he needed to know in order to resolve the challenges of his existence on earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provided Adam with an insight of his place in the universe, and his mission and his purpose. That is the meaning of asma. What I'm trying to say here, brothers and sisters, is that while the deen and the Quran emphasize the notion of ilm and the notion of knowledge and the notion of learning so much, modern Muslims are not paying as much attention to that concept. They are not. Which ilm, by the way, are we talking about here? Because I'm pretty sure that people's heads are spinning right now. Everyone understands ilm, understands knowledge the way they want. So what is knowledge? What are we talking about? What is ilm? Are we talking about material sciences? So when you go get an engineering degree, does that mean you have ilm? You go get a JD, does that mean you have ilm? It's something that will help you get a job, fill your belly, take care of your family. But is that the ilm that we're talking about here? It's necessary, don't get me wrong. Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, in the Ihya, in his greatest work by far, the revival of religious sciences, he says that the pursuit of material sciences like medicine and law and engineering and understanding carpentry and how to ride horses and how to build houses, all of that is what Imam Ghazali characterizes as fardu kifaya. It's a communal obligation, meaning the ummah, every little community, every village, every city of the ummah is required by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and by the decree of the Lord Himself to generate and produce people from amongst its ranks that will become doctors and will become engineers and will become lawyers and will become carpenters and so on and so forth. Not everyone is required to do it, but the community needs to produce such people. Otherwise, if we fail to produce it, everyone acquires a sin in the process. That's the difference between fardu ayn, the individual obligation, such as your salah, you're required to do it, no one can do it on your behalf, and fardu kifaya, which is the communal obligation that the ummah, needs. Like for example, salatul janazah is a communal obligation. Not everyone is required to pray janazah, but at least a group of us need to pray janazah. Advocating for Muslim rights before the state and before the law and before lawmakers is also fardu kifaya. And when CARE go and does advocacy on our behalf, they are fulfilling the communal obligation for the entire community and the entire ummah. Does that make sense to you? It's very important. So no one is standing here to belittle the power of material sciences. But that is not the ilm that you are required to pursue as an individual. That is not the ilm that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran. He says, iqra. The knowledge of politics, ilm. Was watching the Judge Kavanaugh hearing in the Senate yesterday. And it was extremely interesting to watch. And if you didn't watch that, by the way, that means you are not a relevant Muslim. You don't understand the challenges in your own society. Things that will affect you and affect your children, and affect your wages, and affect every single aspect and corner of your life. You're letting other people make decisions about your own life and your own existence without even knowing what is going on. You get slapped to the right and slapped to the left and you accept it. You don't do anything about it. Until when? Until you're pushed against the wall in the corner somewhere and there's absolutely no inch of room for you to maneuver? Is that what you're waiting for? I watched for hours the Judge Kavanaugh hearing. And I have my own feelings about it that some people will probably have disagreements with. This is not the platform to discuss it. But is that the knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran? Absolutely not. It is important for us to understand it, but that is not the knowledge that is required. What then, Imam? Are we talking about memorizing the Quran and the Hadith and understanding Seerah and all the other religious sciences? Well, yes and no. Yes and no. There are people who memorize the Quran and they have bad character. You've seen them. There are people who use the Hadith not to inspire you, rather to put you down and judge you and hurt you. There are people who study the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ and they never apply it. It's just abstract knowledge for them. There are people that are so good at fiqh, but so horrible in their akhlaq. The knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala required us to pursue, brothers and sisters, is supposed to make you a better human being. It's supposed to inspire you. It's supposed to make you satisfied. It's supposed to give you content, rida, with your place in the universe. That is the knowledge. Okay, Imam, fine. What is it then? What is it? What is ilm that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran in Iqra? It is what Imam ibn Qudam al-Maqdisi describes in his great book, the Mukhtasar, Minhaj al-Qasidin. He says, the only valuable knowledge, the only valuable form of ilm is ilmu mu'amalat al-abdi li rabbih. To understand your place vis-a-vis the Lord. Where do you stand with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Where do you stand with the universe? If you're still asking questions about your purpose in this life, if you're still asking questions about why you're here and what you're supposed to be doing, then you have no idea about what that ilm is, even if you memorize the entire Quran and you're a hafiz. I just had a conversation with a brother about a week ago. He's in his late 20s. Seems like a really good guy. Used to go to the masjid his entire life. His parents took him to Sunday school. He memorized half the Quran. He attended all the different classes and all the different halaqas. Even when, and this, I'm just using his words, he says, Al-Maghrib Institute, every time they came to this city, I've never missed a class. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, it's a true story, I'm not making it up. A week ago, I had a conversation with this guy. And then, suddenly, he decided to become an atheist. The knowledge of the Quran and the Hadith and the Seerah and all the classes that he took did not come to his aid when the little termites started eating out his brain. Didn't come to his aid. What is the point of having all the knowledge of the deen when it doesn't come to help you when you're tossing and turning in your bed in the middle of the night, anxious and worried about who you are and why you exist? There's no point. And I had to talk to him, believe it or not because he became an atheist, but because he started insulting his parents when they prayed. His mom and dad that raised him as a moral human being, he sits in the corner and he makes jokes about them when they pray. That's what hurts them the most. And that's why we had the meeting. To tell him that you should have at least some humility that you might be wrong. There is room at least that you might be wrong, right? And he says, yes, of course. And if there's a possibility, even if it's slow, that you are wrong, why do you have to burn all of your ships and destroy your bridges? Why? What did your parents do to hurt them? The knowledge, the quantitative knowledge, did not come to his aid when he got stuck. When he was passing by, some kind, an atheist sort of like a marketing table, and they gave him some flyers, and he took the papers, and it messed up his faith. Completely messed up his faith. That is not the ilm that we're talking about. Ibn Qudam al-Maqdisi says, "Ilm mu'amalat al-'abd li rabbih." How do I treat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Where do I stand in this universe? Do I have enough answers from my Imam and from the Quran that describe my purpose in this world? When I put my head on my pillow, am I happy and satisfied with my existence or not? Or am I anxious and worried? What do I think about evolution? What do I think of the sources of humanity? How do I grapple with accusations against Islam? It is not the quantity of what you know, brothers and sisters, it's the quality. It may be just a little bit of knowledge, but it'll make you the happiest human being. That is the ilm that is required. And you need the quantity, by the way, in order to get there. You have to study the Quran, you have to study the Hadith, you have to be a student of history, you have to be a student of politics, you have to understand your surroundings, you have to understand the world, and you have to reach a world view that will make you satisfied and happy as a human being. A world view. The ilm that we're talking about here, that Imam ibn Qudama talks about, is your world view. There is no point in understanding the Quran and the Hadith and the Seerah, and when the first atheist comes along, puts you in the corner, and you have no words to respond. There's no point. When your iman shakes in 1 second like this, there is no point. When Islam tells you something and society tells you something else, and you find yourself inclined to follow popular culture and not the tenets of the deen, then there's something wrong with your understanding of ilm. Ilm is what you acquire from chemistry and physics and hadith and biology and history and the Quran and all of them combined, that helped you shape the proper worldview. Does this sound like philosophy? Maybe. I don't care about the labels. But one of the greatest atrocities that modern Muslims have to grapple with, brothers and sisters, is that we have turned Islam into a quantity, into a quantitative approach. The more, the merrier. Make dhikr, but you don't need to understand the dhikr as long as your tongue is constantly saying it. Read as much from the Quran as possible. You don't need to understand it. Follow the do's and the don'ts without asking any questions. We have removed quality from the deen and made it all about quantity, and that is not helping us. That's all I'm saying. Quantity is still important, but what I'm saying is that it is not helping us. Turning Islam into a set of rituals and do's and don'ts removes purpose from the deen. And by the removal of purpose, we remove the true essence of ilm that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala required us to acquire in this world. Why does it happen? Why does it happen? What are the obstacles that stand between us and the pursuit of knowledge, the knowledge of the deen that will be the fruit of our hearts? The scholars, had a very long list. I just picked a couple of them for you today. Ad-Da' wa Dawa, Imam Ibn al-Qayyim talks about that, the illness and the medicine, one of his greatest books. And he talks a lot about these things, and I will share with you, just for your own insight and amusement, some of the things that the Imams talked about. Number one, materialism. Without hesitation, materialism. The heart is filled with other things. We are filled with 24-hour news. We are filled with social media. We are filled with smartphones. We are filled with entertainment and movies and songs and fun and places and things. That's all we care about. And when the heart is now filled with things like that, there is no more room for ilm or spirituality. The ilm that provides you with spiritual enlightenment. And again, a lot of people pursue ilm. I'm not questioning that. That's the problem. There's a lot of students of knowledge. A lot of students of knowledge that I know, and I have so much respect for them. But you ask them, why are you pursuing knowledge? They don't have an answer. You pursue knowledge in order to achieve spiritual enlightenment, spiritual satisfaction, to become a happier human being. I understand, I get it. I understand why I'm here. I understand my place with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I understand my purpose in this world. That is more important than anything else. That is more important than anything else. But we have completely clouded our own judgment by the constant exposure to the aspects of materialism. And we're treating our kids the same exact way. Whatever the children want, just give them. Whatever the kids demand, just give them. All of my kids, none of them have any phones. My daughter is 15. She doesn't have a phone. It's not a requirement. You can live without it. I swear to God. Try, put your phone on the side for a week. Wallahi, you will survive. You're not going to die. Least of all the children. So my son goes and he takes the bus to school. And then I see every single day 4 or 5 other kids. My son is the only one that is sitting and reading from a book. And all the other kids with smartphones, what are they doing with the smartphones? They put them in their pockets because they're very responsible. And they're going to read books as well? They're not doing that, I guarantee it. All the kids are opening their smartphones, watching God knows what on their phones. You have to say no to the children on a regular basis for them to grow and become good human beings. Even if you're capable, even if it's in your pocket, you can just give it to the kid in 1 second. Just say no for the sake of it. For the sake of it, so that they have some sense of struggle. So that they know that they need to put some effort into it. So that they feel like they have to earn it. So that whatever you give them becomes worthwhile. Otherwise, it's all the same. I use it and have fun with it and cast it aside and demand more. Materialism has corrupted the hearts so severely. Parents before children, and we wonder why we're not spiritual. I wonder why I come to Taraweeh and I don't cry behind me. I don't know what is wrong with me. No, you do. You do exactly know what is wrong with you. You're just denying it. Number 2, we de-emphasize the importance of the knowledge of the deen. This ilm is not important for us. You know, oh, brother, mashallah, you received a PhD from Harvard. Mashallah, look at that. That is like right up there. But someone achieves the knowledge of the deen, okay, he's all right. He's okay. The Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَرْفَعُ بِهَذَا الْكِتَابِ أَقْوَامًا وَيَضَعُ أَقْوَامًا. Honor and dignity are defined by how connected you are to the Book of Allah. And Allah will elevate you and honor you and dignify you by this book, or humiliate you by your discarding of that book. That's what the Prophet says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what society says is that the material sciences and secular sciences are more important than the knowledge of the deen, right? This is not true. Our sins, brothers and sisters, and that's the third one. We keep committing sins and we keep violating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we keep crossing the line right and left on a regular basis. Haram relationships, haram business transactions, haram things we watch, haram engagements on a regular basis. What do you expect is going to happen? That your heart will be enlightened by the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you are, inundated in a quagmire of sinful behavior? It doesn't work that way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, كَلَّا بَلْ رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. The sins that you've committed created a black layer that surrounds your heart like putting your heart under siege. فَلَا يُحِلُّونَ حَلَالًا وَلَا يُحَرِّمُونَ حَرَامًا. They don't understand, they don't make halal halal or haram haram. All the definitions have become, wallahi, you're gonna be shocked at this. I have had Muslims who argue with me about whether or not homosexual behavior is haram. We're having these conversations in 2018. Why? Because society seems to be going in a certain direction. So we have to go in that certain direction as they do. As the Prophet ﷺ taught us. They will follow them even if they go and hide in little burrows and holes in the ground. We will follow them everywhere they go. And are you serious? Are we having this conversation? No, Imam, it's not haram. Okay. Enlighten me. Enlighten me. How is it that it's mentioned so many times in the Quran and you're still saying it's not haram? Well, it is not homosexual behavior that is haram, it is gang rape that is haram. And the people of Lut used to commit gang rape. It is not homosexuality that is haram. Wallahi, I've had, my blood pressure I needed pills. I needed pills after that conversation. Because my blood pressure, now we have to talk about the basics. We have to talk about the fundamentals. And I'll talk about them, don't get me wrong. I'll talk about it. I have thick skin. I'll take a deep breath and I'll fight the battle. But the problem is that we are committing the sins, and when we commit the sins, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blackens your heart so that you don't recognize what is right and what is wrong anymore. So you need to cast aside the sinful behavior and make tawbah and istighfar in order for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you the enlightenment. The basic enlightenment that is necessary for you to even understand what is right and what is wrong in the first place, let alone follow. We need to know what is right first so that we can follow it, right? The fourth point that I wanted to share with you, which Imam al-Qayyim also talks about, is really hits home for me, and that is the often harshness of the teachers. The Imams are often harsh. Harsh in the way they deliver the message, harsh in the way they approach sensitive matters, harsh in the way they preach, right? They bluntly just say it as it is, and sometimes it's necessary to do that, but ultimately the message is also completely irrelevant. So it's blunt and aggressive, and it's not relevant. So sometimes people are just sitting in the khutbah and they're like, I don't really know what the Imam is yelling about right now. Okay, I was yelling a few minutes earlier, okay? But I hope that you understand why I was yelling. But sometimes the Imams are yelling and people don't even know why they're yelling. Like there's a tremendous disconnect between you as a member of the audience, as a congregant that's coming here to worship and come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Imam and the message that the Imam is choosing. Completely irrelevant. And you know the one thing that irks me the most is when the Imams make sweeping arguments about the world that are completely removed from reality. Simplistic messages about science and the Quran and things like, oh man, please, at least have some respect for our intelligence. I've had brothers, wallahi, who refrain from going to Salat al-Jum'ah. They don't go to Jum'ah anymore. You know why? They say, the masjid is an assault on my intelligence. It's an assault on my intelligence. I'm a smart guy. I can't go. I feel stupid when I go to the masjid. I feel stupid. I've had the blessing for so many years of not having to sit through Salat al-Jum'ah, by the way. Because almost every Friday I have to give the khutbah for so many years. But the ones where I travel, for example, and I sit through Salat al-Jum'ah somewhere, and I was like, I really hope I'm not like that with my own community. I really hope that the way I feel about the Imam is not the way that my people feel about me when I deliver my khutbah. Allah, it's horrifying. And that leaves our people feeling that Islam is not relevant anymore. I just need to go to Salat al-Jum'ah, check it off, and then go back to work. That's it, done. I don't want to think about it. We don't have conversations about the khutbah anymore. We don't go to talk to our kids about the subject of the khutbah anymore. It's not important. It's a chore. Check it off and then go home, do something else. Go back to my life, the important things that I need to do. Right? Last but not least on that list is sectarianism. We don't pursue knowledge because we have labeled our teachers. This person is Sunni, that person is Shia, this person is liberal, that person is conservative, this is Ikhwani, this is Tablighi, this is Deobandi, this is Salafi, this is Sufi. Khalas, that's it. I put the label before I examine the knowledge. And once I've put the label, I will dismiss everything that the scholar says. Whereas we need to judge the words of our teachers and our leaders and our imams on their own merit. I need to completely forget about who said them and examine the words themselves. I need to critique everything that is being said, including from the imams that I love and support, including the very words that are coming out of my mouth right now. You cannot take them for granted. You critique them, and you develop your own views about them. But we have rendered knowledge irrelevant when we have labeled our scholars and we've labeled our teachers, and that's it. I go to YouTube, I listen to this sheikh because I agree with his ideology. And I disagree with that imam because I disagree with his ideology, and that's it. Everything this person says is right, and everything that person says is wrong. It's convenient. It's pretty convenient. And all you get is just the echo of your own words and the echo of your own thoughts, and you're never pushed out of your comfort zone, and your ideas are never challenged. So the wrong keeps getting reinforced over time. And the biases keep getting enforced over time, and we wonder why, as a Muslim community, we are not able to experience true spiritual enlightenment. I have seen converts, particularly white, Caucasian converts, I have seen them going into tasawwuf by the hordes. Why? Because they are seeking something that they can't find at the conventional masjid. They're seeking some type of spiritual presence that they can't find here. You know, some tasawwuf is mainstream and some tasawwuf is bid'i, right? But they don't make that distinction. They go here, they go there, as long as they feel something in their hearts. We've turned them away. We've turned them away. And I wanted to take advantage of today to remind you that every single one of you has an obligation by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, an obligation to pursue as much quantity of knowledge as possible in order to achieve spiritual enlightenment, in order to understand your place in this world, to be comfortable, to be happy, to be content. And as long as you're still fidgeting and restless, then you have not achieved it yet. That's a very simple and basic litmus test for you. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our good deeds and forgive us our sins, to enlighten our hearts and minds. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us love for the Quran and love for the Sunnah and love for the path of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our good deeds and forgive us our sins and establish us with firmness on His path. Brothers and sisters, speak to Allah from the heart. ادعوا الله وأنتم موقنون به. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وقائد الغر الميامين محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وارض عنا معهم بفضلك وكرمك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم آمين. My dear brothers and sisters, a reminder today to myself first and foremost and for each and every one of you to fulfill the divine command of pursuing ilm and pursuing knowledge. We are all educated, we have our degrees, and we come to the masjid, but there's a lot more than that needs to be done. And I wanted to give you an example. I have, for example, students of my own, maybe about 10 of them that I work with intimately, and we've been working with each other for a couple of years. That is a group of about 10. Let us assume that there is 100 of those groups in our community, and this is not true, by the way. This is an absolute exaggeration. It's a remarkable exaggeration. The number is a lot less than that. But let us assume that there's 100. Let us assume there's 200 of those groups, and there is 10 each. We're talking about 2,000 students of knowledge in our own community that are seriously learning the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to achieve spiritual enlightenment. You know how many Muslims live in this area? About 80,000. The percentage is negligible. What is it that 78,000 of us are doing? Coming to Salat al-Jum'ah and you think that this is the only source of knowledge? It's not. Salat al-Jum'ah scratches the surface. Salat al-Jum'ah is a reminder. It's not a source of knowledge. 78,000 of our Muslim community is not doing anything about the fulfillment of the obligation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a very stark number. And it scares me. Because it explains everything. It explains why we're not engaged with society. It explains why we're struggling with mental health issues. It explains why we're carrying our cultural baggage and bringing it right here into this community. It explains our cliques. You know, every ethnic community is just, in their own little enclave, and we don't want to engage with others. It explains everything. Because the light, the nur of that knowledge is not there. And so we are driven by our base instincts. We are driven by our passions. We are driven by instant gratification, what makes us feel good now, right here and now. We are not driven by value and principle, because that can only happen when the nur of the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes the center of your life. I'm actually reminded of something that Imam, that Mu'adh ibn Jabal used to say. When he was on his deathbed, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, he was literally dying. And they recorded his last words. He said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma innaka ta'lam anni la uhibbu al-baqa'a fi ad-dunya wa la tul al-mukth fiha li ghars al-ashjari wa jari al-anhar. Lord, you know all too well that I did not desire to stay in this dunya and to live a little bit longer because I enjoy the beautiful trees and I enjoy the running rivers. وإنما أحببت طول المكث في الدنيا لمكابدة الليل الطويل وظمأ الهواجر ومزاحمة العلماء في حلق الذكر. The only reason I wanted to live a little bit longer, Lord, is because I enjoyed staying up during the night to pray. The long, lengthy nights when everyone else is asleep. I enjoyed fasting on a hot summer day. And I enjoyed attending the study groups and the halaqas and the learning circles with the scholars. And I enjoyed us rubbing shoulders with each other. That's the only reason I wanted to live in this world. And without that, when you think about it, without your acts of worship, and without being surrounded with good people, and without pursuing something that is as sublime and beautiful as the knowledge of the deen, what is the point really of living in this world? What is the point? Every single penny you make today is just going to be someone else's at some point. It's either you spend it, or you're going to leave it behind and someone else will. What's the point? That we fill our bellies? That we procreate? That we buy nice cars? What is the end goal of all of it? That should be your pursuit. Ask yourself, what is the end goal? Why am I in this world? What is the answer that will give me satisfaction? And if you have that answer derived from the deen, you have reached the ultimate. You've reached the ultimate answer. The students of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and let me end with this story, including Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari, that all of you know about very, very well. Muhammad ibn Ismail was still young at the time, and they would all see Imam Bukhari. He had so many commitments, right? So he would run from one halaqah to the other, from one masjid to the other, constantly around the city. And Imam al-Bukhari saw him once running between two halaqahs, barefoot with his slippers under his armpit. And you know, the roads back then were not paved with beautiful concrete and stuff like that, the sidewalks and everything, you didn't have that. So you're really stepping on rocks and stones. And so affectionately he goes after the Imam and he says, "Hey, Imam, you need to rest a bit. Take it easy, you know, just pause, put on your slippers, and then keep walking. I know that you're rushing from one halaqah to the other, but take it easy, rest a bit." And what does he say to him? He say, "The only resting place is when I meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not in this dunya to rest." And he told him, you know, his eternal saying. Many of us think of Imam Ahmad and we don't remember that saying, but this is how he's known amongst the scholars, right? It's not by fitna khalq al-Quran. It's not the fitna that made the scholars think of Imam Ahmad. It's that one saying that Ahmad ibn Hanbal said. He said, "Ma'a al-mahbarati ila al-maqbara." I'll stay by the inkwell until my grave. I'll stay by the inkwell until my grave to learn and read and write and continue to be inspired and inspire others. That's the mission of my life. To be a good teacher and to live that happy existence. Nothing else. And when it's time for me to leave the world, I will take my inkwell with me. I want them to bury the inkwell with me. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to inspire us the way He inspired those great men and women of old. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put humility in our hearts. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put nur in our hearts. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put knowledge in our minds and to help us act upon this knowledge. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us acquire knowledge that will make us better human beings, that will make us happier human beings. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us learn knowledge that will be of benefit to us. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us knowledge that will refine our character, that will give us better akhlaq, that will help us treat others with more compassion and empathy. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to elevate us in the ranks. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring us closer to Him in the life of this world, to help us find our purpose, to help us find meaning. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us repel evil with good. I ask Allah to make the Muslim community in this part of the world involved in the affairs of its society. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us catalysts of healing in the lives of others. And Lord, as you have granted us the opportunity to come to this place of worship, to turn our faces to you and to learn about the deen, Ya Allah, we ask you to gather all of us under the shade of your throne on the day of judgment, and to admit us to Jannah in the company of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma aghfir lana dhunubana wa israfana fi amrina wa thabbit aqdamana wa ansurna ala al-qawmi al-kafirin. Taqabbal minna innaka anta as-sami'u al-alim wa tub alayna innaka anta at-tawwab ar-rahim. Allahumma inna nas'aluka min kulli khayrin sa'alaka minhu Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. ونعوذ بك من كل شر استعاذ بك منه محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. نسألك الخير كله عاجله وآجله ونعوذ بك من الشر كله عاجله وآجله. اللهم يا ربنا علمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا برحمتك علما. اللهم اجعلنا من العلماء يا رب العالمين الذين يخشونك في هذه الدنيا، وادخلنا الجنة في زمرة الحبيب المصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا.